Okay, folks, welcome to Part Z. You made it. This is it. We've got to the end of transportation impact assessments. Well done. Well done. We made it all the way. It's been a long road, but anyway. What do we learn about in TIAs? We've talked a bit about the general stuff, how you describe the development. We've talked about assessing the existing traffic conditions, site trip generation, assignment, distribution, future background, future total. Hopefully all these words are making sense to you. How to identify computer packages that you're going to use, and then how do we think about whether we're going to have transit impacts. That's not something that we're doing too much yet. Then there was a big section on parking, which is always a perennial issue, whether this development you're proposing to build is going to take up all the parking in the area and all the people who are there already won't be able to park their cars. And then finally we talked a bit about access and loading and how you get in and out and whether the garbage truck can get there or not and all that sort of stuff as well. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea as to what a transit impact statement is. There is one thing on the learning thing that we didn't really quite get to, which is why Laura's joining me, because I'm getting a bit tired of talking, and that's transit-oriented development. So Laura, take it away.
You won't typically see transit-oriented development in your impact assessments, but it is a tactical way that we can encourage people to travel by modes other than the private vehicle. Research suggests that the built environment, so densities of housing, of jobs, diversity, land use mix, that is, urban design, destination accessibility, so how easy it is to get places, and distances, how far you need to travel to access different modes, can influences people's travel choices. And that's simply because it might make travelling by public transport, travelling by bike, travelling on foot more convenient or more amenable. So this has given rise to a strategy you may have heard of called transit-oriented development. It goes by some other names like compact development, smart growth, walkable communities, and these are all aimed at stemming urban sprawl and shifting people away from private vehicles and onto other more sustainable modes of transport.
I suppose when I think of transit-oriented development, I always think of Europe, because it always seems like everything there is close to the rail line, close to the train station, it's easy to get around. And then I also think of places in the US where they call something TOD, but in actual fact, it's a whole lot of parking right next to a railway station.
Yeah, TOD is a loaded word. Comes with political underpinnings and financial underpinnings. Some people like to call car parks transit-oriented developments, but at the end of the day, an ultimate transit-oriented development is one that integrates like intensive land uses of retail developments and residential developments right near the transit facilities, so that they become easy to use.
And I suppose as traffic engineers, you in the future will have the opportunity to make small decisions that might try and push us in the directions of TOD. If you work overseas in Southeast Asia, Europe, parts of South America, I suppose, as well, you'd definitely find some very transit-orientated development going up. Even in here in parts of Melbourne, I suppose, there's bits and pieces.
Yeah, and a good example is Box Hill Central. So you've got a shopping centre located literally on top of and below a bus stop and a train station. Can't get much more convenient than that. And I know I prefer to catch the train to Box Hill or the bus than drive there. So.
Whereas here at Monash Clayton, I suppose, are we transit orientated? No, probably not. I'd say that we were more developed, and then the transit came a bit later. We're 5 kilometres from the nearest railway. We've now got the 601 bus, which is excellent and I love it, but it came after the development, I suppose. So that's probably sometimes the problem. You get people used to the idea of driving everywhere, and then you bring the transit later and it's too late. They're already set in their ways.
Yeah, one other way to think about it is how segregated or how integrated are the land uses and the activities with the transit. And here at Monash, we're pretty separate from those transit facilities. Whereas in Box Hill, to use that example, it's all integrated and it's easily accessible, the retail development with the transit development.
Well, there's still a fair bit of parking around Box Hill, I suppose, as well. But then you've got to account for the people who live nearby, but not in a very good spot for a bus or whatever. So it is always a balance. And what we would call TOD here, I don't think anyone in Europe would call TOD very often. They just call that development, maybe.
Yeah.
It's all about context, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
And I suppose that sort of gets us to the end of this sort of TIA session, this sort of idea that it's all part of a larger planning and approvals process. It's often contested. It's very contextual. There's some research going on just recently from Chris DeGruder, Jeff Rose, and a few final year students, as well as Long Trong, who's now at I think. Anyway, they were looking very much at how the tribunal process here in Victoria is making decisions specifically about whether to accept, whether to allow or whether to disallow a new development that is addressing transport issues through using travel plans. That's quite an interesting piece of research. Sometimes I think it depends on who your tribunal judge is. As to what the results might be. Paul Mees, whose work I would definitely recommend you having a look at if you get time, wrote a very interesting thing about Who Killed Melbourne 2030, which was this grand transport plan, well, not just transport plan, this grand planning plan.
You don't say a bed of nails, was it?
Yeah.
An integrated transport plan.
That's the one, yeah. It's grand plan that we were going to change the way Melbourne looked, and we were going to get to 20% transit mode share by 2020. And then it sort of didn't work out too well, and this idea, I think that was the one that had the green wedges in it, and they sort of disappeared because people who owned that land knew that it was worth a lot of money if it wasn't a green wedge. So it's a very contested area. We as traffic engineers are sort of getting in there a little bit, but we're coming at it from a technical point of view, whereas quite often it's a planning, politics. These decisions are made in council meetings. And I suppose leaving you with the big question is how we want the future to look. Here's a spot in Canada. I'm sure you've seen places like this in Pakenham, in Cranbourne, in Frankston, in
Tiny as well. You've got to think west.
West, yeah, good point. And Laura's from the west, so she knows a bit more about that area than I do. Susie would be able to give you examples from KL in Malaysia. This sort of low density development. This is very well designed from a traffic engineer point of view.
Nice grid.
It looks great. Yeah. Is this good from a transportation engineer point of view? Would you like to be the person who wrote the traffic impact statement for that block in the middle there somewhere? Or would you like to write the traffic impact statement for, a development like this one that I'm about to put the video up for? The Toronto Islands, which is a fully walkable area. You get there on a ferry. There's maybe about 5 vehicles on the island, including the fire truck and the school bus. Everybody rides their bikes around. There's a local store to get to places, and you're still within a half-hour ferry ride of the middle of downtown Toronto. It's pretty annoying when the ferry gets stuck in the ice, but it's pretty nice sort of area.
Just a good excuse to work from home.
Oh, exactly, yeah. These are the larger picture things to sort of think about in transportation impact statements, but as you would have told by the length of this video series, it is fundamentally a very detailed and analysis-heavy process. So well done for making it to the end, and look forward to seeing you in class on Wednesday. Whew, I'm so tired.
Cool.